Stephen Masse, welcome to the Author's Voice.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Your latest book, The Short Circus, is the winner of the 2012 Pinnacle Book Achievement Award for Juvenile Fiction. It's a very fun book about Jem Lockwood and his big brother. Set up the plot.
Jem Lockwood is 12 years old. His mother decides that he's getting a little bit too restless. He has no father. His father has left them 4 years ago. And now his mother calls the Big Brother Association urgently. And Jesse Standish is the big brother that he's assigned to. And at first he's afraid to have a big brother. And once he gets to know him, once he begins to get to know him, he likes him very much. They get along very well. But very quickly, Jem finds out that Jesse's rented house is about to be put on the market by the elderly owners. And one day, one of Jem's friends, while they're playing softball in a field near Jesse's house, Jem's friend slaughters the ball and it goes right into the window of the kitchen.
Oh boy.
Some people are looking at the house to buy it. So, of course, that closes down that sale. And Jem decides that he's going to try to sabotage the house from this point on to make sure that it's unfit for buyers for the rest of the summer at least. Now, another major thing that happens in the story is that Jem and his friends discover that the pond where everybody goes swimming is closed or about to be closed because two boys, and they actually see this happen, two boys have been cut while they're swimming inside the pond. Apparently there's glass and barbed wire put into the pond, and nobody knows how it got there. And so Jem decides who did it?
And we won't tell who it is, but basically he goes on and trying to find him. Let me ask you, Stephen, how this is in your first book. How do you pick your plots and how do you pick your characters?
This book was a lot different from my others. This book actually has so much real life in it because I knew the boys who make up the models of the characters that are in the book. So Jem Lockwood is mostly taken from a kid that I knew a number of years ago. And his friends in the book were also taken pretty much right from the kids themselves. And a lot of the things that happen in Short Circus happened in real life as well. So I just pretty much borrowed a lot of those things. And I thought that the kids had such an interesting life that summer that it was something that probably should be shared with other kids as well.
Have they read the book?
Many kids have, yes.
No, have those two?
Strangely enough, the original Jem Lockwood has not read this book, to my knowledge, anyway. He's older now. He's moved away to Florida, so I'm not even sure whether he knows the book even exists.
That's funny. Stephen, when you write, do you go in there with a certain pre-notion or pre-idea of where the character is going to go or where the plot is going to go? Not this one because it's based on a real life situation, but your other ones. Do you try to control the plot or the character?
That's a great question. My first book, which was published in 2007 for adults, is called A Jolly Good Fellow. And that book I started pretty much off the top of my head. And when I started that book, it was quite a number of years ago. And I wrote about 80 or 90 pages of the book and came to the brick wall. There was no place I could go with that book.
Writer's
Went to bed that night thinking that this book was going to be over. And that night I had a dream of, as if it were a movie, of what needed to happen to get from that part of the book over the bridge of doubt that I was having and into the rest of the story. And I knew pretty much where I wanted the story to go, but the characters were sort of leading me there. And so there was a bit of a block for a while, and then the characters led me to the ending. And of course, 20 or 30 rewrites happened over probably 20 years before the book was actually published.
Of course, isn't that key though? It's always rewrite,
absolutely.
rewrite.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden the floodwaters break open and things start to happen. The book which took me probably the least time from writing to publication was actually my latest children's book, which is called The Taste of Snow. And The Taste of Snow, it started out with me telling children the story. And the girl who asked me to tell her the story is the daughter of a very dear friend of mine. And she was 10 at the time. And she took my hand at a Christmas party and sat me down on the couch and said, "Will you tell me a Christmas story?" And I said, "Sure." And I came up with the story off the top of my head. And a few days later, I got a Christmas card from her. And inside the Christmas card, she wrote, "A magic candy cane for you too. Make that story a book. Your books rock."
Very nice.
So she had already read A Jolly Good Fellow as a child. She read an adult book at 10 years old. And she also read Short Circus. And so I wrote The Taste of Snow from December to May of 2010. And it was on the shelves hardcover in the end of November of 2010.
Wow, that's quick.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yes, I believe it's 2011. I'm sorry. I correct myself. It was 2011. And the book is copyright 2012, and it's won 4 honorable mentions in the New England Book Festival, the London Book Festival, the New York Book Festival, and in the Paris Book Festival.
Wow. Have you always been a writer? Have you always wanted to be a writer?
I have, yes. Since I was probably in the 4th grade, I think the first inkling of that was one time when I was writing a composition in the 4th grade. I went to school with nuns, and the nun who was teaching got a kick out of me laughing at my composition as I was writing it. I had witches and goblins that were riding on broomsticks through the sky, but they had to stop for red lights. And I thought that was such a clever idea at the time, being 8 or 9 years old. And so she asked me to stand in front of the class and read it to everybody. And that was sort of a moment of glory that I think still stands out in my memory as being that one point that's probably like the pivotal point. And from that point on, I always really wanted to be a writer. And in the 8th grade, another nun used to punish us by making us write Evangeline, the poem. And so there we were sitting in class writing Evangeline, and I was the only one who didn't mind doing it because I really got a kick out of writing somebody else's words as if they were my own. And it sort of, something happened in my brain, I think, that just made me love the words so much that I decided that I wanted to do that too.
Wow.
And my first books I wrote by longhand. So
wow.
I got a typewriter, then a computer, and now I can't even think in longhand. Everything has to be on the PC.
Of course, it's a world we live in. I'm very curious about people who write fiction and nonfiction, whether they learn anything from their characters as their characters develop. Or is it all sort of inner knowledge inner wisdom that you have?
Very, very good question. Even though all the characters, as the characters in your dreams, really are reflections of who you are, but each different character is a facet of your personality, we're always learning about ourselves. And the journey of writing a book, for example, Short Circus, when I'm putting myself into the mind of a 12-year-old boy, that really does show me something about myself. I do learn something about myself. There's a certain nostalgia, there's a certain desire to maintain a childlike quality in my personality so that the world will always seem fresh and the world will always seem whole and new. Um, as opposed to the character in The Jolly Good Fellow, who's basically a broken-hearted man who is so destroyed by loss of love that he ultimately commits a kidnapping. And the kidnapping is from his pen, his point of view. He's actually making recordings of the entire kidnapping from start to finish and everything that happens in between. And the things that I learned from the process of writing A Jolly Good Fellow about myself were, how do you handle lost love? How do you handle recovery from lost love? And how do you get back on your feet and find new love? Those are the kind of things I think that you can not only learn when you write a book, but it's very therapeutic as well. Because
Very
you go through this whole journey and you have to be really very honest with your own soul. And so whether it's a child's book or an adult book, you're still going to learn quite a bit about yourself as well as about other people.
Fascinating. So is there another book in the works?
There is. Actually, there are a few books in the works. My children's book, which I'm hoping to actually get some time off, I have to give myself a sabbatical, is a book about a very young girl in the whaling days whose mother dies. And so she becomes an orphan, and she runs away from home thinking that she's going to be put into an orphanage. And she goes down to the shipyards and goes on a ship and finds herself falling asleep. And when she wakes up, the ship has set sail. And the ship is on its way to San Francisco, all the way around the southern Cape. And so she finds herself an unwitting stowaway on the ship. So I'm not really sure whether I'll call it The Little Stowaway or just Stowaway, but that's the next children's book I'd like to write. And my next adult book I would like to call Water into Wine. And that's a book about a college grad who's actually thinking of going to grad school, perhaps maybe even be in grad school. I haven't really fleshed out the character very clearly yet. But she's heartbroken, and she basically gives everything up, sells everything, gets on a plane, and she's going to go to the Middle East to go on an archaeological dig. She's studying archaeology.
Very interesting.
And she goes on to an archaeological dig where she discovers a box in which is a papyrus scroll and 2 jars made of earthenware. And the scroll, which she can't read, but one of the other people there can actually read it, the scroll says, in this box, in these jars, is wine made from water at the hands of Jesus of Nazareth.
Wow. All right. Don't give any more away. That one sounds very interesting.
That's the very beginning chapter, pretty much. So that's that's it. That's
very interesting. All right, Stephen Masse, thank you so much for being on The Author's Voice.
It has been a pleasure to talk with you, Esther, and thank you very much.